योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि आबाहुपुरुषाकारं शङ्खचक्रासिधारिणं सहस्रशिरसं श्वेतं प्रणमामि पतञ्जलिम् गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः हरिः ओम्. So in the previous session we finished Sutra 2.18 and its Bhashya. So we have already seen or begun to see the what is Drishyam. So we saw Prakasha Kriya Sthiti Sheelam Bhutendriyatmakam Bhogapavargartham Drishyam, and we saw the Bhashya on it. Now comes the next Sutra 2.19, and Vyasa introduces it by saying Drishyanam tu gunanam Swarupa Bhedavadharanartham idam arabhyate. And then comes the Sutra 2.19, which says viśeṣāviśeṣaliṅgamātrāliṅgāni guṇaparvāṇi. Now we'll look at what the Sutra means and then start with the Bhashya. So before the Sutra, let's see how Vyasa introduced it. He said Drishyanam tu gunanam, which is effectively he is talking about the three gunas that we have seen, Prakasha Kriya and Sthiti, or Sattva, Raja and Tama. Their Swarupa Bheda Avadharanartham. So to understand the various, the variety of their forms and also the different of the three individual gunas, there are the three different characteristics and three different swarupas. So to understand the difference in their characteristics and to understand the various forms that they in some sense manifest in or they exist in, idam arabhyate. So in order for that to be understood, the next sutra begins. Now what is the sutra? viśeṣāviśeṣaliṅgamātrāliṅgāni guṇaparvāṇi. So viśeṣa, aviśeṣa, lingamatra, alingam, all of these together in a compound word called the itaretara dvandaha, it becomes viśeṣāviśeṣaliṅgamātrāliṅgāni guṇaparvāṇi. So what are these? These are guṇaparvāṇi. So what is guna? Again we know what is guna. That they are the three Prakasha Kriya Sthiti. Then what is parvan? Parvan is in some sense the different forms of the different manifestations. Parvan lakshana bhede. So the different lakshanas. Now, what is this lakshana? We have seen this earlier also. Very briefly I'll say it again. In the Shastra Prakriya, starting with Nyaya and so on, a thing is considered in some sense to be understood if its differentiating characteristic can be demarcated. And we have seen that. So we have seen the example of the cow having the sasna, and that is its lakshanam, because the cow has it and no other animal has it. So if you say describe the cow, the typical Shastra student will not say it has 4 legs, 2 horns, it is a mammal and so on. In general, it is said that if you know the lakshana, you know the object. So they will say sasnavati gauhu, otherwise sasnavan gauhu. So whoever has this sasna is a cow. Similarly, for another example, vayu. Right? So what is vayu or the air element? So rupa rahita sparshavan vayuhu. Something that does not have rupa, not a visible form, but has sparsha, has a touch. When both of these are called the two dalas, the two petals. If both of these are true, then it is Vayu. So these two things are true only about Vayu, always true about Vayu, and true about nothing else. Therefore, it is Lakshana of Vayu. Similarly, Gandhavati Prithvi. So Prithvi has Gandha, or Gandha is translated. Yeah. So Gandhavati Prithvi. So Prithvi has Gandha. Gandha is translated as smell, that sense which can be sensed by the nose. So that doesn't mean Prithvi doesn't have touch. Prithvi definitely has touch, but the sparsha is not part of the Lakshana. The Gandha is the only Lakshana. So that is Lakshana. So here Parva means Lakshana Bhede, the different Lakshanas. So viśeṣāviśeṣaliṅgamātrāliṅgāni guṇaparvāṇi. So Patanjali is saying that the gunas come in different forms or manifestations, which can be broadly classified as viśeṣa, aviśeṣa, lingamatra, and alinga. Now let's look at the bhashya, and there we'll understand what this is. Tatra Akasha Vayu Agni Udaka Bhumayo Bhutani Shabda Sparsha Rupa Rasa Gandha Tanmatranam Avisheshanam Visheshaha. So it is said that Akasha, which again in English it is, I think it's known as the space element, or I think the ether. So either space or ether. Akasha, I think it is ether, because dik is space. So ether, Vayu, which is air, Agni or Teja is translated as fire, Udaka, water, Bhumi, earth. These are the Bhutani. These are known as the Bhutas. What are they? Shabda Sparsha Rupa Rasa Gandha Tanmatranam Avisheshanam Visheshaha. So there are certain Avisheshas known as Tanmatras. So now the Tanmatra term is also quite specific and unique to the Sankhya and Yoga in some sense. So the Tanmatras are Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. So these are they correspond to the Indriyas, the sense organs, and they are the corresponding objects. So Shabda is the sort of the infinitesimal or the fundamental, not necessarily particle, but the fundamental Tanmatra of the Shabda, of the sound, which serves as the object of the Shrotra, the hearing organ, is Shabda. Similarly, for touch, it is the Sparsha Tanmatra. For sight, it is the Rupa Tanmatra. For taste, it is the Rasa Tanmatra. And for smell, or for the smelling organ, it is the Gandha Tanmatra. Now, for of these Tanmatras, which are Avisheshas, the Akasha, Vayu, Agni, Udaka, Bhumi are the corresponding Visheshas. So for Shabda Tanmatra, it is Akasha. And we have also seen this in terms of the transformation or evolution of Prakriti. So we could say that Shabda evolves into Akasha, Sparsha has Vayu, and so on. Now, what is this Avishesha and Vishesha? So in the context of Sankhya Yoga, it is said that Avisheshas don't have the Shanta Ghora Mooda differentiation, whereas the Visheshas have that. So na Shanta napi Ghoraste namudascha Visheshinaha. So this is very interesting. So the Avisheshas, they do not have variants in terms of Shanta Ghora Mooda. The Sattva Raja Tama elements, they are all made up of Sattva Raja and Tama gunas. But a given Tanmatra will not be sometimes Shanta or placid, suddenly Ghora or aggressive, suddenly inert or dull, Mooda. Those descriptions do not apply to the Avisheshas. A Tanmatra is a Tanmatra. It is a fundamental unit, and it is always that way. The Tanmatras differ among themselves by being the Shabda Tanmatra, Sparsha Tanmatra, and so on. Whereas the Visheshas, the same Vishesha can be sometimes Shanta, sometimes Ghora, and sometimes Mooda, and so on. So that is something interesting to understand. And the other part is how the Tanmatras are evolving into the Bhutas. And then, Tatha, Shrotra, Tvak, Chakshur, Jivva, Ghrāṇāni, Buddhindriyāni. So Buddhindriyas here refers to what normally we call sense organs. The Shrotra, hearing, Tvak, the touch organ, Chakshu, seeing organ, Jivva, tasting organ, Ghrāṇa, the smelling organ. These are Buddhindriyāni. Vak, Pani, Pada, Payu, Upasthani, Karmendriyāni. So vak, speech, Pani, Pada, hands and feet, Payu, Upasthani. So the excretory organ, the generative organ. These are the Karmendriyas, often translated as organs of action. So the five bhutas are viśeṣās. They are viśeṣās of who? Of the five tanmatras, which are the corresponding aviśeṣās. Similarly, the five sense organs and the five organs of action, which is the 10 indriyas, they are the viśeṣās. Who is the corresponding aviśeṣa? Okay, so that is one question. Now, before that, there is one more viśeṣa. Ekadasham manas sarvartham. So here we saw buddhi indriyas and karmendriyas, and then there is the manas. Now the manaha, ekadasham, the 11th, is sarvartham, which means ubhayatmakam. It is both a buddhi indriya and a karmendriya, and all kinds of objects apply to mana. When mana is the indriya, the vishayas are everything. So manas sarvartham. So these are all, so the 11 viśeṣās. But viśeṣās of whom? Ityetani asmita lakshanasya aviśeṣasya viśeṣāha. So they are the viśeṣās of asmita, the asmita principle, which is the aviśeṣa. So just as the five tanmatras have the five bhutas as viśeṣās, asmita has 11, the five sense organs, the five organs of action, and manas, which is a sarvartham. These 11 come, in some sense, come from asmita, or they are the viśeṣās of the asmita. Now asmita we have seen earlier. Asmita is the sense of I-ness. Okay, often called ego with a capital E. This is not ego in the sense of thinking too much of oneself and so on. This is the sense of I-ness that comes in. From there come the indriyas, they are the viśeṣās. Again, very interestingly, from the line that says, Na shanta napi ghoraste na mudascha visheshinaha, means asmita, since it is a aviśeṣa, it does not have the variation of shanta ghora muda. So this is the pure I-ness principle. That is asmita. It is different from what is colloquially known as ahankara, or normally what we refer to as ego. Asmita is the pure sense of I-ness, which has been clearly characterized as aviśeṣa, and therefore doesn't have the shanta muda ghora variation. But indriyas, they are viśeṣās, and they vary in shanta ghora muda. And all of this we have seen referred to in our teachings often. The Guruji would often refer to different areas of the body or the different culture of an asana, saying, oh, he may say that the frontal thigh is showing too much rajoguna. So let me move my intelligence to the root of the back thigh, and so on. So he used to say these things, and then said, see, now the rajoguna has gone away. And so there is a clear recognition of the various indriyas, both the sense and the organs of action, as well as the sharira, the outer sharira is made up of bhutas. So there is a clear recognition of them as viśeṣa, having the shanta ghora muda characteristics. And Guruji in his practice, and sometimes or often in his teachings, used to bring in this aspect of recognizing the shanta ghora muda, which now we know, having seen this text, where everything, all of this teaching stems from, and how important it is. So the asmita principle is the aviśeṣa for the indriyas, and then he says, gunanam esha shodashako viśeṣa parinamaha, of the gunas. Eventually all of them fundamentally boils down to gunas, because there is nothing else. other than Purusha, which is in a totally different plane. It is completely outside of Prakriti. So Gunanam Esha Shodashako. Shodasha means 16. Viśeṣa Parinamaha. So which are the Viśeṣa Parinamas? The 5 bhutas, that makes it 5. 10 plus 5 sense organs, so 5 plus 5, 10. 5 organs of action, so 10 plus 5, 15. And Manaha or Manas as a 16. So now there are 16 Visheshas. So Gunanam, eventually they are all coming from Gunas. And we are looking at guṇaparvāṇi. So Vyasa is linking that to the guṇaparvāṇi term in the Sutra. And he is saying Gunanam Esha Viśeṣa Parinamaha. Again, the other point is also important. These are, after all, Parinama, transformations. What kind of transformations? Viśeṣa Parinamaha. So these are about the 16 Visheshas.
So they are dealing with the Drishya category, the seen category. From the previous sutra, it commenced. Because Drishya and Drashta conjunction is said to be the cause of our sorrows. And therefore the Drishya category was commenced to be described. And then previous sutra said about that, Prakasha Kriyastiti Shilam Bhutendriyatmakam Bhoga Apavargatam Drishyam. Now there is an addenda to this Drishya category. It is being now expounded. What is this Drishya category? Drishya category evolves in phases, particularly because the previous sutra also mentioned or circumscribed the cosmological process, cosmogony of yoga, cosmogony of Patanjala's, cosmogony of Sankhya Yoga, as to how the creation unfolds. And in order that the cosmology be further expounded as to how the gunas evolve, this sutra has come up. Interestingly, we should understand, sometimes we say, I know this person. And when we say, I know this person, if we go into a little critically into the investigation of it, we know that this person has come through different stages, from infanthood, after having born as an infant, then as a child, then as an adolescent, and as a teenager, and then young, etc. But when we claim that I know this person, we totally overlook the fact that we do not know this person in infanthood. So that is totally overlooked. And yet we claim that I know this person very well, I know this person completely. It's not possible that we will have seen the person and known the person from the infanthood as much as the parents would have seen and known that person. So similarly, the creation is a process. It's a gradual process. So see, the cosmology has to be circumscribed, and therefore now these phases of gunas have been mentioned. It is the same guna which manifests in different stages. Just as a person, let's call the person as Govinda. Now, Govinda, after having born, evolves through different stages. Just born, then an infant, and then the child, and then little grown up, adolescence, and then teenage, etc. And through those stages, a person evolves. Similarly, the gunas evolve in cosmology. It's not that a button is pressed and immediately the entire creation is unfolded. So there are primitive stages of creation, formative stages of creation, then primitive stages of creation, and that's how slowly the things evolve. Another example I will give you, like a fruit like banana. The banana which comes on a banana tree, initially is just a flower kind of manifestation. So there's something like a flower, and then we get something like banana-like thing which is very raw, which is green in color. So then raw banana and then ripe banana. So it evolves. So the banana tree also evolved from being in a seed form to sapling, and then the plant, and then the tree, and then it bears out the fruits. And then we eat bananas and we say this is a banana tree. But banana tree is also there in its seed form. Similarly, the gunas in the creation process, they're all gunas in creation process. Right from the first moment when the creation is triggered, from that moment, and even before that, they are all gunas and gunas and gunas. The gunas go through different phases. Now, in creation process, what are the phases of gunas? The first phase of it is markless, and then with some mark, and then unparticularized, and then particularized. So we are seeing a particularized creation now around us. So this is the particularized phase that is called viśeṣa. Viśeṣa means particularized. So our knowledge goes in opposite way than creation way. We first look at the manifestation and we look at the cause of the manifestation and the cause of the cause and the cause of the cause of the cause and cause of the cause of the cause of the cause. But the creation takes place from the other end. So the sutra is mentioning Srushti Krama, Pratyaya Krama, as to how we know the creation. So first we know the manifest form of creation. That manifest form of creation is called Viśeṣa Parva. It is particularized. Then, prior to particularized state, there is Aviśeṣa, which is unparticularized. Like in case of example which I said, banana tree is there also in the seed and in the seed particles, but it is unparticularized. Perhaps from the looking at the seed, we will not be able to say that this is going to be a banana plant. That's why they put labels. The seed merchants always create a packet and put a label that this is banana seed packet, this is mango seed packet, etc., etc. So it is unparticularized. Therefore, there has to be a label on it. Like the seed merchants put labels. They do not store the seeds like groceries stored in containers. So Viśeṣa Parva means particularized. And then prior to that is Aviśeṣa. Prior to Aviśeṣa is Lingamatra. Prior to Lingamatra is Alinga. So these are the Parvas. And our knowledge goes from Viśeṣa, maybe will proceed to Aviśeṣa if we try to investigate the subject matter of the knowledge. We will go to Aviśeṣa. Then further we will go to Lingamatra. And then ultimately, final stage is Alinga. So these are guṇaparvāṇi. Like a man has so many chapters in life, phases in life. I gave the example of Govinda. So there are chapters in the life of that person, Govinda, as just born, as an infant, as a child, and then as a adolescent child, and then teenager, etc. So those are chapters of a person. We do not know all the chapters of a person, and yet we claim, I know this person. I know this person very well. So we do not know the phases of that person, yet we declare. So these are biological phases, and there are so many other phases in life of a person of which we are not really aware, even when we say, I know this person. Economic phases will be there, social phases will be there, personality development phases will be there. So many phases are there in life of a person. Whatever you are today, you were not born this way, whatever 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years back. So there were so many phases in our life, biological stages, which are common to all. And then there are personal phases, social phases, economic phases. So many phases are there, and a person goes through so many phases to be what a person is today. So these are the stages of gunas. Everywhere they are gunas. The gunas only bloom and blossom. Therefore, get different kind of designations, such as markless, marked phase, and then unparticularized, unparticularized. So viśeṣa, aviśeṣa, liṅgamātrāliṅgāni, guṇaparvāṇi. So in creativity process, creation process, the process is from alinga to linga, from linga to aviśeṣa, and from aviśeṣa to viśeṣa. So the cosmology is being circumscribed. Cosmological process has been circumscribed in this sutra because the previous sutra also touched upon cosmology. Prakasha kriya sthiti shilam bhutendriyatmakam. The whole creation is of the nature of bhutendriyatmakata. Bhautika and bhutendriyatmaka. So these are the two aspects of creation. So the cosmology was touched in the previous sutra. Now this is trying to open that out. So Vyasa starts describing the viśeṣa parva. Just now you heard what are viśeṣa parvas. There are 16 aspects there. Pancha Mahabhutas, then Pancha Jnanendriyas, Pancha Karmendriyas, and the internal organ. So 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 1, 16. So just now Srineet explained you these 16 viśeṣas. Then he told you about the 5 Jnanendriyas and 5 Karmendriyas, which Vyasa has described. Shrotra, Tvak, Chakshu, Jivva, Ghrani, Buddhendriyani. They are cognitive organs. And then Vak, Pani, Pada, Payo, Pastaha, Karmendriyani. So just now Srineet explained to you those things. And Ekadasham Manaha. Sarvartham. That means it is both. Mind organ is both. The Karmendriya as well as Jnanendriya. Mind works as cognitive organ, mind works as cognitive organ. It is Ubhayatmak organ, which is an internal organ, while others are external organ. We can see the eyes and ears and nose and etc. etc. The 5 Jnanendriyas are visible from outside. The mind is an internal organ. Also, Karmendriyas are visible outside, but the Manas as Karmendriya is an internal organ, Antarendriya. So that's how the viśeṣa parva is being described. And I won't repeat it. It won't be repetition because Srineet has just now explained you the viśeṣa parva. And this viśeṣa parva, the elemental comes from tanmatra, infra-atomic structure of elements. So there are 5 tanmatra. Shabda tanmatra, sparsha tanmatra, rupa tanmatra, rasa tanmatra, gandha tanmatra. They come, they generate or they have a progeny of the nature of Pancha Mahabhutas, which are Prithvi, Up, Tej, Vayu, Akash. The 5 elements which are well known to you. And our Indriyas come out from another, the 6th aviśeṣa, which is Asmita. So there are 16 viśeṣas and there are 6 aviśeṣas. The 6 aviśeṣas are Pancha Tanmatra and Asmita. From Pancha Tanmatras come the 5 elements, and from Asmita come the 16, the 11 organs. The 5 cognitive, 5 cognitive, and internal. So this is what Vyasa has explained about viśeṣa parva coming from aviśeṣa parva. That's the immediate cause. Aviśeṣa is the immediately preceding cause to entire viśeṣa of 16 classes. And aviśeṣa is of 6 classes. 5 tanmatra plus asmita. So this is what this part of Vyasa's commentary is divulging. Okay.
Yes. So we have seen the षोडशक विशेषः. Now षड् अविशेषः. That is the 6 avisheshas. Which are the 6? Tad yatha shabda tanmatram, sparsha tanmatram, rupa tanmatram, rasa tanmatram, gandha tanmatram cha iti eka dvi tri chatuspancha lakshanaah shabdadayah panchavisheshaah shashtascha avishesho asmitamatra iti. So the avisheshas, and we have seen that what is the avishesha? Na shanta napi ghoraste na cha mudascha avisheshinah. So the shabda tanmatra, sparsha tanmatra, rupa tanmatra, rasa tanmatra, gandha tanmatra are the 5 avisheshas from which we got the Prithvi, Aap, Tej, Vayu, Akash, the elements. So one thing to then see is all the material things have eventually evolved from the tanmatras. Now the indriyas, the indriya-ness of the indriyas, where has that come from? Because the indriya also has a material manifestation. So the nose has a form and a touch. So the nose has like a physical manifestation. That is coming from the tanmatra. But the ability to sense, the ability to act, that makes him an indriya. Where is that coming from? Shashtascha avisheshaha asmitamatra. So the indriyas have all come from the 6th avishesha, which is the asmitamatra. The other word in this in the sentence was ekadvitri chatushpancha lakshanaha. So the tanmatras are said to in sequence have one lakshanam, one characteristic, 2 characteristics, 3 characteristics, and so on. The shabda tanmatra has 1, which is the shabda. The sparsha is said to have shabda and sparsha, and so on. So shabda, sparsha, rupa, rasa, gandha are eka, dvi, tri, chatush, pancha lakshanaha. And the 6th is the asmita matra. So it is quite interesting in the sense that how the material things have come from the tanmatras and the indriyaness of the indriyas, that comes from the asmita matra. Now these are the avisheshas. So we have seen in the sutra it is vishesha, avishesha, then linga matra, and then alinga. So what is this linga matra? That we'll see next. So he says ete, all these. Ete refers to the avisheshas, the 6 avisheshas. Ete sattamatrasya atmanaha mahataha shad avishesha parinamaha. So these 6 are avishesha parinamas of what? The sattamatra mahat atma. So mahat is the name. It is being described as sattamatra, which is linga matra. It is purely the satta. Sat is often translated as existence, to exist. So the satta matra mahat, and the other epithet that is used is atma, because it says satta matrasya atmanaha mahataha. So where is this atma coming from as a description? So one aspect is that Mahan Atma is seen in Upanishads and elsewhere also. And when we say ourselves, me, it includes the body, the mind, and so on, and then culminates in what is called the Shuddha Atma or the pure Atma. Now here, Mahat is specifically the term Sattamatrasya Atmanaha. So Vyasa has chosen to use that word. So one aspect of it is to say that the Atma term is used with in order to do Tuchchata Nishedaha. So the Mahat is not something that is Tuchcha. That is not something that is changed and can be of a sort of a lower grade. Okay? Because the Mahat is a fundamental stage of existence where the to be comes from Mahat. So it is of a high stature. So Tuchchata Nishedaha. Also, it is the Adya Parinamaha. So from the Pradhanam, from the Gunas, the first thing that we can say that it exists, it is the Mahat. Okay. Why not Pradhanam? So we'll see that. Okay. We'll see why Pradhanam is not called Sat. It is neither Sat nor Asat. Okay. But the Mahat is the first Adya Parinamaha, which can be said as Sat, because it is the first stage where there is a Purusharthata. Pradhanam does not have any Purusharthata. It is its own state of existence. But Mahat is the first that comes with Purusharthata. So we saw Bhoga Apavargartham as the nature of Purushartham. So Mahat is the first stage. And it is not Tuchcha. It is not something that comes and goes and extremely Anitya. It is not that. It has a high stature. So that is Mahat. And it is Satta Matra. It has neither Shabda nor Rupa nor Rasa. No, the only characteristic is Satta. Even Asmita is not there, because Asmita is a Avishesha Parinama coming from Mahat. So this is a Satta Matra. Only so that the Satta can also be the Linga. It is like a Chinna or a symbol. The fact you can say that it exists. The first primordial, the fundamental transformation that happens from Pradhanam, whenever a certain Purusha and the Pradhana come into the Sanyoga, the Pradhana undergoes modifications. We have seen that. Pradhana undergoes transformation. The first stage there is Mahat. And therefore, ete sattamatrasya atmanaha mahataha shad avishesha parinamaha. So these, the 5 tanmatras plus asmita matra, are the 6 avishesha parinama transformation of the Mahat. Yattat parama avisheshebhyo lingamatram mahattattvam tasmin ete satta matre mahati atmani avasthaya vivruddha kashtham anubhavanti. So the parama avisheshebhyo lingamatram mahattattvam tasmin ete. So the mahattattvam or the Mahat is the fundamental stage. Thus it is a satta matra. Sat means to exist, to be. So, and only matra means only that. From that, Mahati Atmani Avasthaya Vivruddha Kashtam. From they evolve and they reach a stage of complete evolution, complete manifestation. Anubhavanti. They undergo these transformation. So this Mahat or the Linga Matram, where is this coming from? Akhila Vastunam Vyanjakam. So each and everything has gotten manifested from this Linga Matram. Hence the term Linga Matram. That is the fundamental primordial Linga or symbol, sign, from which everything else, Akhila Vastuni. So everything else has manifested from that. Akhila Vastunam Vyanjakam. And the Linga Matram, as a from a Vyutpatti in Sanskrit can be, you can say Leenam Artham Gamayati. So all the Artha or Arthas, all the existing entities, they finally go and dissolve into the Linga Matram. And hence it is all, that is another Lingam, another reason why it is known as Linga Matram. And that is the great Mahat from which everything has come, which the term Atma is used to establish its superiority or greatness, Tuchchata Nishedaha. And this is about the Linga Matram. Then, Prati Samsrujyamanascha Tasminneva Satta Matre Mahati Atmani Avasthaya Yat Tad Nissatta Sattam Nissadasad Nirasad Avyaktam Alingam Pradhanam Tat Pratiyanti Iti. So all of these, having gone or dissolved back into Mahat, then they go into Pradhanam. And then we'll see what is the status of Pradhanam. Once we have understood the status of Mahat as the Linga Matram, Next we'll see what is the pradhanam and how it is described.
So as I just said, Patanjali Sutra is mentioning Gnaptik Krama. Gnaptik Krama means the krama through which or in which we know the things. Our knowledge always starts from effects, and effects, it goes to the cause, and cause of the cause, etc. So that's called Gnaptik Krama. viśeṣāviśeṣaliṅgamātrāliṅgāni. So from grosser, it is going to the subtler. From the effective, it is going to the causal. Progressively the causal, cause of the cause, cause of the cause of the cause, etc., etc. That is called Gnaptik Krama. That is how we know the world. We know the banana by looking at the banana. We don't know the banana by looking at the seed of the banana. So Gnaptik Krama is that we know banana, then we see the banana tree, then we see the banana sapling, then go to the banana seed. So the Gnaptik Krama is always from grosser to subtler, and from more and more effectual to the causal. While the creation process is called the Sarga Krama. The Sarga Krama is from cause. The creation takes place from the primary cause, main cause, first cause, original cause, to slowly different causes are turned out as effects, and finally we get the effectual universe manifest for our eyes and our intelligence. So now it should be understood here, or it is deemed that student of Yoga Sutra or Sankhya understands this. Now 5 elements are not of one class. Otherwise we dub them as one class. Prithvi, Ap, Tej, Vayu, Akash. We say in one breath the 5 and then we say this is one class. That is not true. They also are from the subtler to grosser. Akasha is the subtlest. And the Prithvi is the grossest. And even the Sarga Krama, in creation process, it is first Akasha. Then comes Vayu. Then comes Teja. Then comes Up. And then comes Prithvi. So that's the creation process. Now, therefore, one should be familiar with Upanishadic quotation. In Taittiriya Upanishad, it is said, Akashad Vayor, Agner Apaha, Abhyam, Akashad Vayor, Vayor Agnehe, and then Agner Apaha, Abhyam Prithvi. So that's the process of creation. First came Akasha, then came Vayu, then came Tej, then came Up, and then came the Prithvi. Prithvi is not earth. It is, I am referring to element. Or when I say Tej is not fire, element of fire. So there are all elements. And therefore, Vyasa opens that out, that reality, the fact. He diverges by making a statement, iti ek dvi tri chatuh pancha lakshanaha shabdadayaha pancha visheshaha. That means Akasha has one guna. And Akasha generates Vayu. So therefore, it inherits the quality of Akasha and then its own quality. So, Akasha Shabda, Vayu Shabda Sparsha, Teja Shabda Sparsha Rupa, then Up Shabda Sparsha Rupa Rasa, and Prithvi Shabda Sparsha Rupa Rasa Gandha. Like if we have to give our full name, we say give our first name and then our father's name. If you know your grandfather's name, you will give the grandfather's name also. If you know great-grandfather's name, you will give that also. So that's how, because we are coming from them. The great-great-great-great-grandfather gave birth to great-great-great-grandfather, then great-grandfather, then grandfather, then father, and then we ourselves. So these are 5 generations of tattvas, not 5 tattvas as we, in common man parlance, we are used to using the expression. But there are 5 generations, and that's why the guna come that way. The first of the element has 1 guna. The second of the element has 2 gunas. The third of the element has 3, and then 4, and then 5. So the Akasha is the subtlest, and it is cause. So the generation is from Akasha, the Vayu, from Vayu, the Agni, from Agni, the up, and from up, the Prithvi. That is why Vyasa has specifically mentioned the gunas, which are allocated to the 5 elements. Then, the bhutas, just now as you heard, they come from Tanmatra. And then our Ekadasha Indriyas come from Asmita. Now this Vishesha has a cause or causal body behind Vishesha is Avishesha. Then what is the causal body behind Avishesha? Yes, there is a causal body behind Avishesha, and that is a Lingamatra. And that is also called Mahat Tattva. That is also called Buddhi Tattva. So just now Srineet explained you that sentence, the statement, Yat tat param avisheshyo lingamatram mahat tattvam. He also told you beautifully as to why it is called Mahan Atma. Because he told you that when we refer to our I, our subjective entity, we are circumscribing so many things, from body to our psychic basic principle of being. So we circumscribe that, and that's the closest thing to the Atma, because that's the first principle delivered by Prakriti. And therefore it is called Lingamatra. It is just only a mark only. See, in a seed, botanical seed, you say this is the seed, and from seed you get a particular kind of manifestation of tree or whatever. Now, if that seed is broken, what do you see? You see tiny particles. Now, if the tiny one of those is picked up and again you open it out, break it, then what do you see? You see nothing. That is not precisely nothing. That is precisely nothingness. And from that, the whole seed is formed. All seed particles come together in an assembly, and that becomes seed. And then seed engenders a plant. And therefore, just now as Srini said, when it comes to Tanmatra and beyond, we don't have the Shanta Ghora Mood Avastha, etc. Looking at the mango, we will get infatuation. But if the mango seed particle is shown to you, you don't get infatuated, because you do not know that it's a mango tree component. The entire mango tree is manifest in that seed particle of it. But then we don't get infatuated, because it is infra-atomic, and then it is metaphysical aspect. And therefore Shanta Ghora Mood Avastha doesn't get attached to Tanmatra and even Lingamatra. So the Lingamatra is explained in the statement. It is only Satta Matra. It is only existence. So here we should know the difference between being and state of being. They are always in state of being. So there is a state of being, and that state of being changes. Sometimes happy, sometimes more happy, sometimes less happy, sometimes not happy, sometimes sorrowed, sometimes very, very sorrowed, etc. So we have different states. These states to what? Which is merely a being. So it is only Satta Matra. It is only a being, a phase in creation. We do not know what is all coming out of it. So therefore, Satta Matre Mahati Atmani Avasthaya, and then Vivruddhi Kashtham Anubhavanti. And from that Mahat comes the Ahankar Tattva, then comes Tanmatra, and then comes Pancha Mahabhutas and Bhautik creation and the sensory creation. It all comes from there. So it goes on evolving. Like seed particle will compose a seed. All seed particles will come together in an assembly and will form a seed. The seed is having potentials to give birth to a sprout. And the sprout will become a plant. The plant will become a tree. The tree will have the leaves and other aspects which are there in a tree. And then it will have flowers, etc., and fruit, etc. And finally, we just pluck the flower, we pluck the fruit, and consume the fruit and consume the flower. So the entire creation is rooted in this Lingamatra in one sense, because the distinction is going to come from there. There will be different seeds for different plants in botanical world. So the Mahati is something like that. That the Vibhuddhi, the evolvement will reach ultimate phase, turning out Sthavara Jangama Parinama, creating giving birth to creation, which is either Sthavara or Jangama, movable, immovable creation, movable, immovable creation, sentient, insentient creation of all kinds. So see the enormous potentials in the Lingamatra. The whole generation is going to come forth from there. And then that also has a cause, which is Alingam. And Alinga has been described in very intriguing kind of predicates, which will be explained by Srineet later. Nissatta sattam, nissadasad, nirasad. So this is a beautiful explanation of the nominal matter. In metaphysics, it is called nominal. What is not phenomenal, bang opposite of phenomenal. So therefore, their predicates are nissatta sattam, nissadasad, nirasad, avyaktam, alingam, pradhana. So we need to understand these predicates. Very, very intriguing. And once you have little understanding, little clue to this, it will be really mind-boggling. So we have come up to Lingamatra. We have seen Viśeṣa, we have seen Aviśeṣa, and we have seen Lingamatra. It has to be noted that these 5 elements are not one class of 5 elements. They are progressively subtler and subtler and subtler, starting from Prithvi. Prithvi is grossest, more subtle is up, more and more subtle is Teja, more and more subtle is Vayu, more and more subtle is Akasha. And there are 5 generations of bhutas. They are not 5 bhutas as generally conceived. There are 5 generations of bhutas. Therefore, they have progressive qualitative aspects, characteristics. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. The first one has only 1, and the 5th one has 5. So there is an inheritance of gunas from the previous, the causal body. So that's how the Lingamatra is explained. Okay.
Okay, so we'll touch upon the Alingam and then we'll stop looking at the time. But since we are sort of in mid-sentence, so we saw Mahati Atmani Avasthaya Yattat Nissatta Sattam. So what is Nissatta Sattam? It is Nirgate Satta Satte Yasmat Tat Nissatta Sattam. Means it does not have Satta, nor does it have Asatta. Both have gone away from it. Which means neither does it manifest. Okay? But still, it is Vastavikam. It is not Asat. It does not mean it is non-existent. It is Vastavikam. So here we are talking about the Alingam, which is also known as the Pradhanam. So it is not manifest. Mahat is manifest, but Pradhanam is not. So it is not Vyakta. So it is Avyakta, but it is still Vastavikam. means it is still there. It is not as though it is not there at all. It is not non-existent. Nissadasat. Nissadasat is nishkrantam satah asatahश्चेति nissadasat. Means again, it does not have abhivyakti. It does not have a tangible manifestation. So nishkrantam satah. So it does not have abhivyakti. At the same time, it does not have abhava. So it is not as though it does not exist. Abhava means it is absent. So it is not absent. So nissadasat. Again nirasat. So see how it is being emphasized. Again it is nirasat. Means abhavatmakata. It is completely different from abhavatmakata. Okay, so the nirasat means nishkrantam asatah. So completely different from abhava. Abhava means does not exist. Okay, so this pradhanam, it is not like that. So it is completely different from that. But it is avyaktam. So it is anabhivyakta. So it is not something that is as a manifestation at all. So it is it is both or it is neither in that sense. And that is what was described as intriguing state of alingam. So this is alingam. Okay. So alingam pradhanam tat pratiyanti iti esha tesham lingamatrah parinamah nissatta sattam cha linga parinama iti. So now of these avisheshas, the lingamatra parinama is the going into the lingamatra, and then furthermore this nissatta sattam is the alinga parinama iti, where even the basic unit of manifestation has gone away. That is the alinga parinama. So now he further says alingavasthayam na purushartho hetuhu. So now drishya we said bhogapavargartham, which means it is for the purusha. There is a purusharthata. But the alingam does not have that. So the cause of the alingam is not purushartha. Alingavasthayam na purushartho hetuhu. So we had seen that the mantra from the Shvetashvatara Upanishad is Aja Eka. It is that unborn one. So it is the Pradhana Prakriti is this Nissatasat, and it is not that at that stage it is not a Purusharthata. So Alingavasthayam na Purushartho hetuhu नालिंगावस्थायाम आदौ पुरुषार्थता कारणं भवति इति न तस्याः पुरुषार्थता कारणं भवति. So the coming about of the alinga is not due to the purusha. So the purusharthata is not a karanam, a cause for the alinga to come about. The alinga is always there. So therefore it is not a karanam. So naso purushartha kruta iti nityakhyayate. So therefore this pradhanam, this prakriti is called nitya. Nitya, that is ever existing. So therefore, because it has nothing to do with the purusha sanyoga, purusharthata, etc., it is known as nitya. Trayanam tu avastha visheshanam adau purusharthata karanam bhavati. So for the three avastha visheshas, now what are the three avasthas? The lingamatra, the avishesha and the vishesha. So the three categories of states. So the three categories of states, which are lingamatra, avishesha and vishesha, with regard to them, trayanam tu avastha visheshanam adau purusharthata karanam bhavati. So it begins with purusharthata as being the cause. That is how those states come about, which is not true about alingam. Sacha artho hetur nimittam karanam bhavati iti anityakhyayate. So for them the cause is a nimitta karanam. So there is the things such as the incidental cause, the material cause, the upadana karanam, nimitta karanam and so on. In this case it is the nimitta karanam, because the purusharthata is not materially becoming the lingamatra etc. It is causing the incidental cause, it is causing the states of linga matra, aviṣeṣa and viśeṣa, and therefore these avasthas are anitya. They are not ever there. They undergo transformations. So again we see the nissata sat as well as the how the lingam, the alinga has nothing to do with Puruṣārthata, why it is called nitya, and why the other three states are completely to do with Puruṣārthata, because that is how it was the sort of the triggering cause for the three states, and therefore they are known as anitya. Now further we'll see how the gunas are acting in these states and so on. That will cover in the next session.
So, alinga, the inexplicable, undescribable is being described. This is great skill on part of Vyasa in his commentary. He is trying to describe indescribable. Now, we were told that Buddhi Tattva or Mahat Tattva is only Satta Matra. It is only existent. Now, the cause of it is further subtler and quite mysterious. And therefore, the descriptions come up. Nissatta Sattam. Satta means to exist. And Nissatta means non-existent. So, it is neither existent nor non-existent. So, understand the intriguing aspect here. If something is not existent, you say it is existing. Something is not non-existent, you say it is not existing. Not existing, therefore it is non-existent. So it will be either existent or non-existent. If it is non-existent, it won't be existent. If it is existent, it won't be non-existent. So this is how for our human intelligence, we see these classes. But this is the one which is Nissatta Sattam, that it exists as well as doesn't exist. In one perspective, dimension, it exists, at the same time, doesn't exist. It is not altogether non-existent class. Because we are used to something that is non-existent class or existent class. But this is something of that nature. So how it is nominal, why it is nominal is being described. Nissatta Sattam is the first predicate. Then Nissada Sat. Asad means non-existent. Sad means existent. So it is neither Asad nor Sat nor Nissada Sat. This is the unique status of Alinga. And then Avyaktam. That is how the Avyaktam has to be understood. It's not just something because we cannot see it, it doesn't become Avyakta. We cannot grasp it, it doesn't become Avyakta. Because many things which were not seen are seen today with the help of microscope, with the help of telescope, and with the help of some scanning technology. They are trying to get insight into something or visualize something, see something. Prior to scientific development, when there was no electron microscope, many things were invisible. So, Avyakta should not be taken in that limited sense that it is invisible. Avyakta means not at all manifesting. For any mechanical insight also, it will not be graspable. That is Alingam, and that is Pradhana. That is the first cause. That is the primordial cause. The Alinga is with reference to Pradhana Tattva, the first cause. And then from that comes Lingamatra and then Aviṣeṣa and Viśeṣa. However, let me finally make it clear here that although we are coming from something very, very, very subtle to very, very gross, the gross is not with reference to what is visible to us. The Prithvi, Aptej, Vayu, Akash, Panchamahabhutas are not really visible class. We don't really have them as visible class phase of Prakriti. They are also invisible. They are also metaphysical. They are only envisioned in Samadhi process. So do not think that the Prithvi, this Prithvi, up means a glass of water contains water, fire means a flame. So do not look at it that way. These are Mahabhutas. These are metaphysical principles. And in the metaphysical class, they are gross. That doesn't mean they are graspable and we can be seeing them. We don't really see Prithvi Tattva, Up Tattva, Teja Tattva, Vayu Tattva, Akash Tattva. These are metaphysical principles, and they are only revealed in Vitarkanugna Sampragnata Samadhi. If you recall in the first chapter, the Vitarkanugna Samadhi was mentioned. The subject matter of that Samadhi is these 16 principles. We can see the eyes and ears and nose of a person, but that is not what is being referred to in this, because they are subject matter of Vitarka Anugata Sampragnata Samadhi. So the entire 16 categories are of for revelation through Vitarka Anugata Sampragnata Samadhi. Then later the 6th Avisheshas and Lingamatra onwards, they are all for Vichara Anugata Sampragnata Samadhi. So these are all Samadhi objects. These are not our sensory objects. Don't think that you can be seeing the 5 elements through the senses. And whatever is prior to that. Although that is the grossest, that itself is not for our naked eye perception, naked faculty functions, or naked consciousness. It needs to evolve level of consciousness of Samadhi, in Samadhi, through Samadhi. So don't mistake the gross as the gross for our senses and for our perceptions and cognitions. So these 4 phases are being mentioned. The last one is Alinga. So with the comment that we have seen today, this is the subject matter that we should be talking about. And that's what we have seen. And that's what we have done. Okay?
Okay. So let's recite the shlokas on Guruji and then we'll stop. Vaijñānikam pravaktritva asaneshu kalavidam yogābhyāse ca tattvajñam vandeham sundaram gurum yoga vriksho hi lokesmin yat preranena vardhitah yogacharya guro tubhyam sundaraya namo namaha. Thank you.
Thank you all of you. Namaskar.